Alex Answer here, April 17th, 2019. And how do I bring a sense of spiritual understanding to this story that hits like a punch to the gut? Right? The story hits hard. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and China. We're not going to be reading the full article. It came to my awareness yesterday, looking at Google News, a story from the New York Times regarding 500,000 people that have been identified to be Middle Eastern via artificial intelligence, which is being used in China. Central Asian is another way to describe this ethnic minority of Muslims living in China. And where we're going to start, I mean, I've been really bothered by the story since I even saw the headline at 4 o'clock last night. And I thought, okay, things are getting heavy. Talk about it on VHX. I told myself, as I know that we are entering into this area to where, as we see the geopolitical tensions rise and the staging of the next Third World War, because it's a staging of a war, and we're going to return to that concept today, a manufacturing of a conflict. And there's a number of different things in the story. First of all, you've heard me hypothesize about the idea that we're not alone in the universe, and that the idea of our true creator may be a lot different than, say, those that terraformed early Homo sapiens, especially in and around the time of the flood, including various mythologies of giants. Even China has their own mythology. So does Northern Europe. Not to mention the Sumerian texts. The point is, it seems like a lot of these nation states, United States, Russia, and China, are playing a role for them to get rid of a certain amount of the population on the planet, a specific group of humans. And they will use Islamic extremism as a front to target ethnic minorities. They will even enlist the help of Saudi Arabia. And so there's a lot of different things going on. When I look at this report about artificial intelligence, identifying people by race, and then notifying law enforcement when two or more gather. And inside, intuitively, I have been speaking to you about how I believe the Archons are orchestrating a persecution and even creating a psychological campaign of anti-themism, where various groups around the planet come against the same group, stomping on the face of the Middle East forever. And I want you to absorb certain ideas and understand certain concepts and facts of life. The facts of life, not so much the 80s sitcom, but the facts of life in this scenario, that the United States has been waging these wars with China's money. But I want to start with the acknowledgement, first of all, in a centering here, in that this is bothersome to me because of how much I appreciate Chinese philosophy, symbolism, understanding the dragon as a symbol for spirit, understanding the yin and the yang, the balance of all things, even my own personal martial arts style being influenced in my consciousness by something that was more widely used a long time ago. Early Chinese styles of martial arts, having other fascinations regarding their art, their people, especially their food. And so for years, I have been watching this build up, and I have been interpreting an artificial archonic system placed over the Chinese people, as well as placed over the people of Russia and the United States, truly the people of the world, the people of Europe. But the humans on the ground are not aware of this. They're not aware of this. Yet there are so many humans on the ground with such a deep interest in ufology. Yet the concept of talking about a commonly persecuted group with robotics, that previously Terminator was our number one, our primary, if you will, illustrator of how this could play out. and people saw it as science fiction. And over the years, people talked narcissistically, with the help of InfoWars and others, about themselves and their own personal potential run ins with the robot apocalypse, while this entire time they have unleashed that type of apocalypse with killer drones that never have to come down, powered by the sun. And that's truly disturbing to me. On one level, as they know that the sun is more powerful than them, they too seek to use the power of the sun, but for evil purposes. Will there come a time where the sun's activity is so extreme and powerful that these nations, China included, no matter how much they've tried, will they also face a similar fate that the West is concerned about facing? I'm concerned, however, about a world with no divine intervention. And I see a major solar flare that could affect the worldwide power grid as divine intervention when the worldwide power grid is controlled by those governments that are involved in somewhat what appears to be an ethnic genocide, a coordinated worldwide campaign with a cross focused on the same nations. Meanwhile, they will build up their artificial conflicts between each other. They will stage conflicts potentially in the future. And many civilians in the Western countries may unfortunately see a reality where they are victims of war. And that's not me wishing it. That is me looking into the reality as I believe they are terraforming it on the ground for us as humans. And for over 10 years, I've had my eye on China more than any other group, while others, even within the alternative media, and I'm starting on a long-winded introduction to an explanation for people that are new viewers to my content. You know, I've seen people roll their eyes at me worrying about China back in the day. And there was always like a big focus on just a few Rockefellers, just a few Rothschilds. But even within that paradigm, there is the obvious trail to China, David Rockefeller and China, and the buildup of China. And so when you have China involved in that type of persecution towards these people and their supposed opposite in this World War III Game of Thrones in the United States has their own issues, has their own propaganda, has their own fighting in the streets, Group A versus Group B, over who is supposedly less fascist, because that's what it is, competing with helmets and street weapons and street fighting tactics to compete to see who is less fascist. I just want to wrap your mind around that. Wrap your mind around how technology, and I said this in another video, they can outsource the technology and psyops of propaganda to other nation states and to other governments, to where we don't even know what's affecting the Facebook feed. I mean, all of this is common sense. It's global. Governments can access these things. They may shut it off to where their people can't, to where they have a firewall. That doesn't mean that there are people in the Chinese government. That doesn't mean that they don't have some sort of ability or influence over YouTube. Bringing it up again. Is there something about my commentary and warnings about China and Russia that has led to me being treated a certain way on YouTube, to put it simply? You know, I thought about putting this on VHX, but I think that I can get around the algorithm by speaking in generalities. But certain words are flagged, and how do you think that feels as a human? To talk about certain issues that affect people and to literally see the psyops for what it is. And to feel years and years of my concerns validated, I don't want my years and years of warnings validated. I'd like to see some sort of change in direction. For years, people have brought in a new age mentality into geopolitics, as if you can wish certain things away or have one level of understanding of karma, but then act like it doesn't apply to the United States or those of us that live within the construct of this collectivism. We are in a collective construct, like it or not, even if we're individualists. So whatever happens to the United States and the collective average American in the future, guess what, sunshine? We are affected. Now, we have the International Criminal Court that has found the United States and Western powers innocent of war crimes in those countries that I've often said have resulted in channels being flagged by even discussing those things or showing war footage. Not to mention the personal threat to one's person and the long-term trauma from reporting on these things during a time of war. I can remember how I felt 10 years ago, how terrified and angry I was 10 years ago, how I felt so alone in letting others know through my own broadcast that the CIA was involved in torture. And now watching a guy like Alex Jones that would talk about some of those things, being more of that system that would promote that, and then what that means. These agents of influence, be they double agents, triple agents, or agents of something that most people don't even understand, and knowing that it's possible, reeling it back to the Archons. Even driving up here to this residence, speaking to you through video, recording as I was driving, talking about, is there something about certain humans that have a certain genetic expression that the Archons look down on and will mind control those humans around that targeted human with the unique genetics, that mixed race biracial human? There's a reason why they've created this propaganda campaign, that those type of humans are somehow infecting your world in an adverse way. Is it your world, or is it the Archons, the world of the Archons, that are seeing their world affected? There are people that are researchers on the web regarding the Archons that also demonize those people, that talk about immigration and the things that are taking place right now as a product of the Archons. Yes, on one level, you have people that are orchestrating the major decisions that are taking place. But with regards to the expression of life, the different forms of life, there's truly something evil that has an agenda to demonize diverse forms of genetics and to isolate them and to isolate us. Because, like it or not, I take a look at my own life and my own challenges, and a lifetime of isolation, marginalization, and what one could describe as bad luck. But a lifetime of isolation, marginalized from both bloodlines. And then I met the world and saw what it thought of me. And I happen to have been gifted, you could say, with coming into adulthood right as 9/11 was taking place, that would change elements of my own physiology and psychology and trauma, as well as the world's, forever. But with me, it would permanently be about, and no one would really care, not wanting to be marginalized as someone that's a threat for obvious reasons. And talking for years in a speculative way and feeling that people weren't really getting it, feeling that people were thinking that I was crazy. Talking about the potential for technologies known and unknown to pick up on particular ethnicities that they have deemed not Archon approved and marked for elimination. And so I have this vision that's coming to me of the next 91 years between now and 2100. A massive ethnic cleansing of the bloodline that I carry. And that all of these things, and 9/11 is the gift that keeps on giving for those that have this interest. And there are even those that know about the truth about that day, and they have still been conditioned to demonize those people when 10 years ago they weren't doing that. That's how deep the spell is, that someone doesn't even have to be paid. Take a look at a guy like Chris Green. Take a look at others that may have been like yelling at the top of their lungs about innocent men, women, and children in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and they would yell and literally project their vocals. And now there's no discussion about that. There were even people that were yelling at protesters, Trump protesters, screaming that they were pro-war. What about the drones over Afghanistan? They would yell as they waved their Trump flag. They were using that as propaganda for Trump when Trump's not at all about being concerned about drones over Afghanistan. He has dropped the mother of all bombs. We watched people actually switch their position on those people in the course of the last few years. Some of them are even in the audience and are in no way, shape, or form showing concern for those people. And now we do live in a world where it is proven that the algorithm is pointing in certain ways that is dividing people by race. It is not a social justice warrior mechanism to produce change we can believe in or some sort of slogan, creators for change. All of that has been a hoax. All of that has been a hoax to magnify the crowds that say, you will not replace us. And as I expose their agenda, these videos are often demonetized because AI is not designed to differentiate between those criticizing white supremacy, white nationalism, and the overt use of it. They actually demonetize videos criticizing it while it's recommending like wildfire season, the worst of the worst. Any idea of change is them creating so much censorship, right, to others, right? They create so much censorship that now you look at YouTube and it's mainstream media, but it's still pointing to top dogs in the alternative media. It's pointing people to AMTV. It's pointing people still to the worst of the worst. So everything about them supposedly trying to promote minorities or trying to curtail certain things is some sort of a mad scientist plot to convince people that it's a different Google and YouTube. And so we talked about recently, there's widespread uproar about Google being used to help China build up their AI. But is there going to be uproar about China's AI being used to identify specific ethnic minorities while they have over 1 million Muslims in concentration camps, which probably should have been mentioned a little bit earlier in the video. And it's like for years I've been warning about China's role in roundups and worse, and even China being a front for something more sinister, even non-human. And that I do foresee a roundup of Caucasian women within the United States in the future of this nation. I've never heard others speak of similar, and I'm aware of what's out there on the internet and what people aren't talking about. And I'm aware that in the world of adult entertainment, that a great deal changed in recent years. Right? We're all human, but not everybody admits it. Right? But the greater reality is I speak about things for some reason on a planet of billions where all these people by the millions that consume that content are keeping their mouth shut, not saying that there is this propaganda campaign in media and YouTube, but also in the realm of adult performance art to where it is promoting people basically having their way with each other during a time of war, during a time of collapse, during a time where the grid goes out. And so there is an active program through those websites and cartoons to propagandize the men and women or boys and girls of today's generation to be programmed for what could happen after the collapse. And when people are on the run and being hunted down, their flesh being hunted down and sold, used for various purposes. What I see coming is like some sort of like portal connecting the earth to hell. But you see, this has already been unleashed. I'm trying to help you understand this. This is already happening to those people in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so the ethnicity of those people, whether it's going to be a full blood or half, how deep they're going to take this persecution, there's something the world governments have prepared. And they're creating a worldwide technology and 5G that automatically through AI and its connection with the Archons, I'm alleging, it's going to immediately identify the people of those bloodlines. So you have the white nationalists and the Chinese government on the same side in the sense. You need to understand this, especially those that are on the side of the 14 words in 1488. How does that connect with the Communist Chinese Party and a common goal of anti-themism as they build their new world order? How are the actions that people are doing right now going to curse themselves later on when we're under occupation and China's coming for the next target? In a world of people talking about karma and spirituality and victims of war and even democracy now, well, and even women's rights and Me Too, well, why is there such a veil over the obvious? Why am I alone in this? Even within the arena of people talking about molestation, and Me Too and the things that men do to women that are not good. What about like taking this higher to the idea that we're in a fallen world and there are negative entities that think that we are their domesticated animals? And so, like, humans think about humans having their way with humans. They don't really think about the archons and the spiritual parasites having their way with humans. Staging wars and using technology to create a common enemy. So they're going to create that common enemy, and you're going to have that genocide. They're going to seek to have that genocide unless the sun stops them or some other cosmic forces. But that's what we're dealing with. And it's painful to me because I'm fascinated by Chinese medicine and acupuncture and martial arts and food and philosophy and mythology and things not even defined, feng shui for spiritual protection. Um, I don't believe that one group is superior or another, but I like Asian people. I've had some positive experiences with people of Asian heritage. I had a friend that was Japanese in Portland, Oregon. Hey, the Japanese aren't perfect, but I don't compare him to the Japanese. He was his own guy. He was his own John Wayne. The A-Man was, listen, I don't know, A-Man, if you're watching, but it's like, look, you guys know about like Jet Li, you guys know Bruce Lee, you guys know Bolo Young. These guys were like movie bad impersonations of what I feel was the real deal, who really lived that kind of a life. Rubbing elbows with wise guys and people that put people in holes and surviving to escape that type of a life before the big age of Big Brother. To put it simply, working a door at nightclubs where sometimes you'd have 20, 30 Bloods or Crips or gangbangers, and he may be working the door by himself, like extreme situations. And so, like, I grew up having a deep connection for the Asian martial arts, but also the peaceful side of it, nonviolence, the spiritual side of it. And I've been seeking to collect more books on things like that. And I appreciate things that come from I Ching and Taoism and other forms of numerology. And I think that I've had a deep connection to a Chinese spirit guide as a child, probably still do. We all have connections to spirit guides, guardian angels, as well as spirit totem animals, which we may not be familiar with. China also recognizes the totem animals or the element of spirit and invoking those energies. And throughout my whole life, I felt such a deep affinity to China as if I was there once. And so, having said that, brought you up to speed on how I am on that level spiritually with China, that I feel a deep spiritual connection with China. There's another reason why I'm doing this and why the fall of China and the co opting of China to play this role of rounding these people up and then to be in this war with the United States, it is heartbreaking to me. It's disturbing. And also seeing how this is a front for something very archonic. If there are people that end up disappearing, on one level, sure, you have the ratio of more Chinese men than women by far that can be a motivating factor, just like adult entertainment in the West and certain things that are depicted, fictional accounts of U.S. troops having their way with women in hijabs, for example, is becoming the new trend. And it really happened the last year, to where all of a sudden, it's the sexualization of the woman in the hijab, right as this news of these roundups in concentration camps for Muslims is coming out in China, as we look at these war crimes, including sexual assault, women being raped in Afghanistan, all these years of investigations, and they've been found not guilty by the International Criminal Court. Okay, and a lot of these international organizations are controlled by globalists that are supported by many Democrats. So you have many people within this nation that are in no way, shape, or form awake to the danger that awaits them, that is coming at them. Nor are they showing the spiritual compassion to what's happening to those people. And in some cases, what I'm going through, being in a body that's going to feel some things that you're not going to feel. If there's certain even technologies that are also used on people that bear a certain type of genetics to drive them crazy or to make them sick or simply to kill them, I have more of that blood in me than some of you. And so, like, I'm living a very painful life in a world where I've done a lot to contribute to your research community. And collectively, the people have no place for me in this world. And I find this to be interesting in light of all the good work that I've done in a world where it's documented now that others are actually being put into concentration camps, and they're not getting a protest from the Trump support base, nor do we really hear much from the Democrats. It's just happening. It's just a needle in the haystack issue. It's not something that's going to cause tears. But hey, the Dixie Chicks, hey, guess how much she's worth? Hey, there was a white girl that unfortunately was shot by a thug in rural Washington. But guess what? Here's 1,000 stories about it. Why 1,000 stories? Because her life is considered 1,000 times more valuable to the people of this culture than those people. And that is why this world is falling to the next level. I, Alex Ansary, am one of the few people to present this message to you while the time does exist. While the time does exist. I am here to deliver this message of warning. Turn away from those actions and thought forms that allow these people to be persecuted, this illusions of separation that say you are so different from them. You're not going to be affected by these things. We're all affected because we're all connected. I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.